Once there was a very, very speedy hare. Once there was a very, very speedy hare. He would brag from near and far that he was faster than a car. Oh yes, one time there was a very speedy hare. The plucky tortoise said to hare, let's have a race. The plucky tortoise said to hare, let's have a race. If you're so fast in running shoes, then there's no way that you can lose. Oh yes, the tortoise said to hare, let's have a race.
Hello everyone, happy Hockey Day in Canada. And yes, it is the Hockey Podcast. And yes, it is a weird way to start a podcast of hockey, but it really is just simply describing the playoff race that is in the Western Conference. It is the hare and the tortoise, but I think everyone on that seems like tortoises or don't want anything. So we'll get into that. Yes, it is Hockey Day in Canada, though. Today is a day where we celebrate the great game of hockey. Today it is in Swift Current, and it didn't occur to me until Sean brought it up that this was going to be a pretty emotional day because, of course, last year it's not even a year since the tragedy in Humboldt, and Swift Current had their own tragedy as well. But maybe we'll start with quickly kind of what's your favorite thing about hockey? Like, what do you remember when you were a kid about playing hockey? You guys can start, Sean or Tyler.
Oh, I just love the camaraderie. You almost were, you're friends for life. You can go away and not see each other for years, and then you meet up randomly, and you have you can reminisce about season. I've got a couple friends who I see every once in a while here in Calgary. That whenever we end up seeing each other, we talk hockey. One of my friends, Matt Blay, he's a local musician. He actually posted a picture of himself during Picture Day back when we were playing for our minor hockey days. And it brings back memories. And then if you're lucky enough, you actually do end up with a lifelong friend. And I was lucky enough to get that with a couple people. But it's the camaraderie, how much fun you had. It was something to look forward to after school, on the weekends. It was just awesome.
For me, all of those things as well. As a little kid, and then even now today, just putting the gear on, you feel like you're invincible somehow out there. I mean, obviously, injuries do happen in hockey, but you just feel bigger and more. I don't know, epic somehow. You step onto the ice, you've got your teammates there. You guys are working towards a common goal, all that kind of stuff. You meet lots of people over the years, and I've had the experience of that in both playing and officiating. I've officiated around the province and made a lot of friends that way, and we're that third team on the ice, not well liked. We're in it together, and yeah, the bonding is great, and the rink has really become a happy place for me, and I think that's what hockey really ultimately comes down to.
You also get to see some, if you're lucky enough, you get to see people turn it into a career, whether it is officiating, playing, or journalism. Wes Gilbertson is a writer for the Calgary Sun. He coached my brother and officiated me when we played. So it's fun seeing that. And then my brother played summer hockey with Tyler Myers, played in the Max Midget tournament, and played against Michael Backlund, Oscar Mueller, and just it's always cool to see where these players end up. And lucky, I was never good enough to where people I played against did much of anything, but my brother was. And to see some of the Tyler Myers, Wasey Hamiltons, the Justin Dowlings, like even if they're just AHL players, it's still very cool that they get to make a career out of hockey. And even if you don't get to make a career out of hockey, it's a lifetime sport, whether you can play or watch. It's just a part of the Canadian culture that I don't think there's another sport that really like captures a culture of a country more than hockey does for Canada. Yeah, there's a lot of like very much more popular sports around the world, like soccer, but that's just for ease of access and all that. But I think just the way Canadians embrace the sport and the camaraderie, the community that it creates, the church of Saturday night, hockey night in Canada. It's something completely different than I think you get with almost any other sport. The closest thing I would say is football in the southern states.
Yeah, and we've had a big dump of snow, and it's been a pretty cold week all across Canada here, but. So this is where I was thinking, like, you sometimes will see people play football in the cold, but it's very rare. You'll maybe rarely see someone maybe kick around a soccer ball, pretty small percentage. You'll never see anybody in the cold play baseball. But you go to a small town on cold days, you know that there's going to be a couple of rinks, and people are going to be bundled up and skating around the ice, drinking hot chocolate and playing hockey. And it doesn't matter what level that you're at, just people play, and it's fun, and it's just, it's that community. And it is something uniquely Canadian because we're willing to do this no matter the temperature. Like if it is 40 below, for not everybody, but there'll be people out there trying to skate and get out there. And, how many people have a skating rink in their backyard because to play hockey? I mean, the famous Gretzky story. Craig Simpson in Edmonton has a pretty big rink. I in his old house. I don't know if he still lives there or not. But like, just sort of it is truly connected to us as Canadians that we're willing to. We're willing to go to all lengths and efforts to play it because there's such a love for it, and it doesn't have to be like. You don't have to be super skilled because I never was. I wasn't I was pretty good with the stick and the puck, but the skating part wasn't my greatest strength. So, but it just you watch it and it's fascinating how people have made it like a really good passion and part of Canadiana, I think.
Yeah, and I don't think that was more clear to people than during the 2010 Olympics. How meaningful the two hockey tournaments were, particularly the men's tournament, obviously, and then how the country reacted. I had the privilege of being in Vancouver. I wasn't at the game itself. I watched on TV, but I was there and part of the celebration downtown afterwards. And the way everybody was coming together, it's like if there's anything that's going to unify Canadians, it's hockey.
Yeah. And for the most, that's one of the biggest reasons why I think people consider the 2010 Olympics one of the best Winter Olympics ever, is because of what happened and how hockey came. And it wasn't even like it was the difference between 2010 and 2014 really was like 2014 was, for all intents and purposes, that game was a blowout, even though it was 2-0. That Canada-US game, that's probably up there one of the better games that has ever been played.
Yeah.
So I remember multiple games in that tournament. The quarterfinals versus Russia, in the old Melrose Bar here in Calgary, watching watching Canada put up a bunch of goals on them, but still sitting there going, "It's Russia. You can't count them out. They've got the firepower." And then the gold medal game, and coast to coast, there were like the main streets in towns, cities were shut down the Red Mile here in Calgary was shut down so that everyone could go out and high five everyone and celebrate. Yeah,
it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I was living in Calgary at the time too. Yeah, it was just kind of a special feeling, and we unite. Even though there's sometimes we don't like the other team, and we have certain hatred for certain players. At that time we put that aside and unite and cheer for the player, even though they're not necessarily on our side. And then it can lead to a brilliant career, and it can lead to money, and it can lead to prosperity. Like, for example, Austin Matthews, who one of the big stories this week, that deal has been signed, a 5-year contract, leading to having him there till 2024. Certainly one of the top players in the league, which also led to a controversy around Mitch Marner, which his agent had to walk back. He started by saying that Marner was being lowballed, and they're not taking any hometown discounts. He had to walk that back. But that's still where that is at this point, I don't know. But where I want to lead this to is, well, we can talk a little bit about that contract. But where I also want to lead this to is this becomes an interesting strategy when you come to Vancouver, because it's sort of a similar situation. You've got Austin Matthews. We can compare a little bit because they're centers to Elias Pettersson, and you got Mitch Marner to Brock Boeser. So looking at what is going on and what has just happened, and you can comment on how that contract happened in Toronto too, but how does this play out, and how, if you're Jim Benning and the Vancouver Canucks, how do you approach this Pettersson-Boeser contracts that are coming up?
Well, luckily for the Canucks, they don't have to sign both of them in one off season, or like they're 2 seasons between when Boeser's contract expires, which is this summer, and when Pettersson's contract expires. So that, first off, that helps things. Secondly, Boeser is not eligible for arbitration rights and can't be offer sheeted, just due to amount of games played, it's accrued professional seasons. Because he came in and played only 9 games in his first and burned that first season off, then he and because of that, he's not eligible for offer sheet or arbitration rights. So that gives the Canucks a little more leverage with Boeser to maybe keep the cap down a bit, depending on how long of a contract they go with him. And then with Pettersson, we don't know what the cap's going to look like in 2 years. So, and that I think his comes up basically right when the CBA is going to be re-upped or renegotiated. And there will also be a new U.S. TV deal, I believe, as well. So those 2 things are going to change the amount of hockey-related revenue that is available to the players. Because I think in the new CBA that the hockey-related revenue is going to get redefined so that there's less escrow available, less escrow coming off the players' paychecks every paycheck, which has been one of their major issues going with this current CBA. So those 2, I think, will help them a lot. That being said, with the way Pettersson is playing and the comparisons he keeps getting for, let's just look at the latest one, most goals through 44 personal games at age 20 or younger. Alex Ovechkin leads the way at 32. Elias Pettersson is tied with Wayne Gretzky at 25, Dale Hawerchuk at 25, and Brock Boeser at 25. So, but the way Pettersson's playing, like, he's going to, and I don't see him dropping off, if not just drastically getting better too. So, sky's the limit for what he's going to make, in my opinion. I think he might be, the way he continues to play and the way he thinks the game, I think he might even eclipse this Austin Matthews contract in terms of percentage of the cap.
The Canucks, I think, are set up well. I don't feel really there's much for overpayment happening there right now other than Louis Eriksson. If the Canucks are disciplined about free agents and they don't go and do what Toronto did and bring in like a John Tavares where you have to pay a big amount of money to get him to come, then I think they're going to be, they're going to have lots of dollars with the cap going up and all those things that you pointed out, Sean. They'll be able to give Pettersson the deal that he deserves, and as long as he keeps playing the way he's playing, he's going to be a top paid guy in this league.
So let's look at, like, I feel like I pick on the Oilers, or we pick a little bit on the Oilers, but just comparison here, the McDavid Draisaitl contracts that Chiarelli signed. Like, I guess my question is do you go full length, or do you go what Toronto ended up doing? And I actually don't think was a terrible idea. I actually think it was a good idea. A shorter contract with a little bit more money.
That's tough. I think you have to go long term with both of them. You've got your franchise center. You've already got Bo Horvat locked up pretty long term to a very reasonable deal. And then you also have, and there's going to be cap available. Like I said, in terms of long term, the only one that may be a bit of a handcuff contract is Louis Eriksson. But if he retires, that cap comes off the books because he signed it before he was 35. And I think there is a legit case, and I think there's been some talk that if you look at the majority of how Louis Eriksson has played, he looks tired. He looks ready to move on to the next stage of hockey and retire. And after he gets his bonus in the summer. So if that happens, then the Canucks are looking really good for their cap. And the only other issue is how do you get from now till then, and what are you adding? Are you relying on the development of the younger players, or are you adding super skilled players who you're going to have to pay a lot of money to add to the team?
There's really nothing out there, I don't think, coming up that I don't think you have to overpay and go after. I mean, not legitimately. I mean, I guess you could ask about Erik Karlsson, but I don't think Erik Karlsson's coming to Vancouver, and I don't think Erik Karlsson's ever going to play in a Canadian market again. So there's not really a lot out there coming up that I see as like, oh my goodness, Vancouver Nets gets really be involved in. I think sticking to what we've been talking about, draft, develop, I think that you're safe. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how this works out for Toronto, because, I mean, I think they're in one hand, they're good shape. In the other hand, they sped up this rebuild to the point that if they don't get a cup within the next 2 or 3 years, this may hit them harder than they meant it to plan. So it's
I completely agree with that, Kevin. But I don't think anyone there cares. It's about taking a shot at it here now.
Yeah.
It's been 52 years.
This year is their year to go for it too, because of how drastically their team and cap situation changes next year with the addition of the Matthews' extension and Matthews' contract. Marner's going to have a new big money contract. And then because of that, players like Jake Gardiner may get pushed out. The other issue is that you also have to look at Kasperi Kapanen. He's someone that the Leafs should be looking to find a way to keep, because he's a very important piece of what makes them successful.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, I agree. I wonder if we're going to start hearing Kadri trade rumors soon.
Yeah. Unfortunately for them, they decided to sign Patrick Marleau to a multi-year deal. Well, he's playing well for them. That's $6.25 million. That won't come off the cap unless until the end of the contract, because he signed it. It's a 35 and over contract.
Yeah, so that's still there for next season for sure. Should also note Bar Lindholm, Andreas Janssen, Ron Hainsey, and Igor Ozhiganov are all our guys on their active roster right now that are free agents after this season. So they not only do they have to worry about fitting Marner's contract under the cap, but they gotta fill out their roster still with whatever's left.
Yeah. And to your point, Kevin, in terms of what's available for the Canucks coming up to sign, I think there's a few wingers in this free agent class that are likely going to hit UFA, and the Canucks need to be in on them. And yeah, you're going to pay a lot for them in the 9 to 10 million range, but I don't see anything in the farm system right now that has the skill and has the whole package like these players do. The Artemi Panarins, the Jeff Skinners, the Mark Stones, who if I was running the Canucks, he'd be the guy I'd go after, because I feel like he would be a absolutely really good fit for Bo Horvat.
Yeah,
in his wing.
Yeah, that would be a really good combination. I certainly agree with that. I guess my point is there's no one out there that you're like, it's not going to impact what you're paying Pettersson or Boeser is my point. Like, no. It's like, okay, you're in good shape with that. Like, I mean, Mark Stone is going to be expensive, but it's not that it's going to be a worth it expensive if you get it. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The only wrinkle that could be added is Quinn Hughes. How good is he going to be? Because if he comes in and plays his 9 games this year, like it looks like he will be once Michigan is done their NCAA season, and they're not going to be going deep into the Frozen Four this year, he's going to be looking for a new contract in the same offseason as Pettersson. So, and if he is as good as everyone thinks he should be, he's going to be looking for a lot of money as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, I guess we'll cross that road when that comes. Well, what is interesting about the defense is it had an interesting week. First of all, a very devastating, terribly looking injury for Alex Edler. That I mean, I'm grateful it turned out a lot better than it did, but that looked horrendous, and probably should not. Careful when you watch that one if you haven't seen it yet. But that was a big. Gruesome. It was very gruesome. Yeah, it was really, really gross, and it's very rare that you see both teams getting the trainer out as soon as that happened. They knew that something happened there. But this week, and even a little bit before, Ben Hutton played. I'm going to pull Ben Hutton's stats here, because Ben Hutton against Colorado played 22 minutes, and he is starting. Him and Stecher are starting to. I'm going to be a little a little bit here. I think, considering where Ben Hutton was at the end of last year, Travis Green had to have a conversation with him about his shape and his training, and he went on Instagram and started showing that he was making some changes. And we see this with NFL. Everyone's doing like, "Oh, we're going to be great," and then it doesn't turn out. You could make a legitimate argument that Ben Hutton is one of the most improved Canucks this year, from where he came from last year, kind of being in Travis Green's doghouse, to being one of the better defensemen on the Canucks this year.
Oh, definitely. He took what was a very tough season for him last year with the tough love treatment that Travis Green gave him, and took it to heart and went into the summer, got into much better shape, which allowed him to play at the intensity that he needs to be the defenseman that we're seeing this year, which is someone who can play tough minutes, who can play shutdown minutes, who can play in all situations. He's seeing power play time. He's getting penalty kill time. And when the Canucks do have injuries, he's able to step up and play a top pair minutes in a pinch. And you don't necessarily feel too uncomfortable with that. And he's gonna get a nice payday out of it, because it's a contract year for him too. But I'm very impressed with his play, and very, very encouraged, because it looks like they're going to re-sign Edler, and then they'll bring back Hutton, and then what that allows them to do is bring along the two young left shot defensemen, first round picks, in Quinn Hughes and Ole Levy, slower. Give them more sheltered minutes. Allow them to figure out how to play at the professional level, and play against NHL players, and defend at the NHL level, as opposed to throwing them in the deep end and just hoping that they can swim. It really allows the Canucks to go into next season, whoever that third left defenseman is. I think everyone's expecting it to be Quinn Hughes, but I still don't think you need to. I don't think Ole Levy's getting enough credit for the season that he was beginning to put together in Utica before his season-ending injury. If he can get back and get back training for the summer, and come into camp, and I don't think he'll make it out of camp, but I think he's going to make the Canucks try and make the Canucks have a tough decision and figure out what they want to do with the left side of the defense by next trade deadline, because they're going to have four very good. They have a potential to have four very good options on there. But having Hutton and Edler up there does allow, because Quinn Hughes is not going to be able to step in and play against the top lines in defensive zones very effectively when he comes in. That's just, expecting that out of him is just too much. So play him in offensive zone opportunities and power play. Let him use his creativity, his skating, his vision, what makes him special, and bring him along slowly. And having Hutton step up the way he has just really allows the Canucks to do that.
Just a Travis Green quote from just before Christmas in regards to Ben Hutton. He said, quote, "Last year it wasn't like he was a lazy person. He wasn't in as good a shape, and I thought it affected him, maybe not on a daily basis, but on back-to-back days. And if you have a hard practice, can you come back the next day and be quick off the mark? I just didn't think he was quite where he needed to be. Give him credit. He has put in the work, and he also knows how I am. If you don't play well, things can change fast." So I guess the lesson there is the grind of an 82-game season if you're not in very good shape, you start to fall behind, and sometimes there's no recovering from that. And Hutton ended up being a healthy scratch quite a few times last February, and we used the term doghouse. I mean, he was clearly in the coach's doghouse, but he regrouped this offseason, and now he looks like an NHL defenseman that can withstand the toll of the long season and pick up some extra minutes when other guys are injured.
Yeah. Against Chicago, he played 30. He led the team in ice time at 31 minutes and 18 seconds, 29 shifts, 3 shots on goal, 2 blocks. I mean, it's really hard to argue the value he has. And I've always liked him, and I think what Green has done with him, I think Hutton is a valuable piece going forward. The other guy actually played more than Chris Tanev last game was Troy Stecher. He got a point, 2 shots on goal, 2 blocks, a takeaway and a giveaway. Played 22 minutes and 49 seconds compared to Chris Tanev's 20 minutes and 50 seconds. But you can take that for what it's worth. But he is. I mean, I think that people had maybe higher expectations of Troy Stecher or higher hopes than what has come out. But he's also a really valuable piece to this team, and especially with a lot of teams really needing a good right-hand shot. You're seeing a bit of an edge as you go forward with a guy like Troy Stecher, what he can bring to this hockey team.
There was a more expectation for offense out of Troy Stecher when he came out of college, but that hasn't come yet. But he's putting up a very solid season this year, and that pass to Pettersson on the power play, was just perfect. And what he did to look off the defenseman to get that passing lane, I think with Edler out, and how just pathetic the power play looked for the rest of the night when they had Hutton up there, I think it's time to give Stecher a shot on that top power play and see what can happen. But the development of Hutton and Stecher go a little bit hand in hand, especially in the last month, because they've been paired together. And that pairing has been one of Green's favorites. Even when they've had Edler and Tanev, the Hutton-Stecher pairing has been just as much used because they've developed and they move the puck well. Because in today's NHL, you can't just be good defending without the puck to be a successful NHL defenseman. You need to be able to move the puck effectively up to the forwards. It's no more glassing out. It's no more icing. It's a good, crisp pass up to the forwards to break out, and good puck movement in the offensive zone. And if you can't do that, then you're going to fall behind. And as good as those defensemen are at it, Hutton, Stecher, we're seeing Eric DeBranson really struggle because he can't do that. You're seeing Pouliot really struggle because he's not doing that effectively. Alex Biega comes in and he's moving the puck very, not super effectively, but understatedly smart.
Yeah. He's a good plug and play guy, Alex Biega.
He's I think he's underrated and underappreciated by the Canucks fan base. He's like your perfect number 7 defenseman. You bring him in, he brings energy, he plays a physical game, and he can skate. He may not be the biggest guy, and that's another thing that Troy Stecher has to deal with. He's not the biggest guy, but he's learned how to play even though he's undersized, and so is Alex Biega.
In regards to Biega, I had a friend who was kind of miffed the idea that Breezeball would get called up and not play. And we've seen this pattern with the Canucks. We've seen this with Demko in the past, where they'll get a call up but not get to play. You do get some practice time with the team, obviously, when you're up. But like Biega, I mean, he's a great soldier. This is the type of culture that Travis Green's trying to have here. I mean, he works hard in practice. He goes long stretches without playing, but when called upon, he comes in and plays well. And the coach wants to reward that commitment. The coach doesn't want to just gift spots to young players because of where they were drafted or whatever political reasons there are. So it's great that Biega is capable of doing that. I was really happy to see him get a goal there the other night. Definitely an underappreciated guy, I think as well.
Yeah, he fits. He fits with what the Canucks need to do in so many ways, and I kind of wouldn't be surprised to see him play a little bit more as this month goes on. Anyway, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens when Quinn Hughes comes, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him play a little bit more too, especially because he can't play both sides. He can play right.
Alex Edler's injury and how long he's out for.
Yeah,
because unfortunately, Tanev's had to switch to his offside to play with Eric Goodbranson on another pairing, and that's just been an adventure.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to talk about too. I mean, the trickle-down effect of Edler being out has certainly had a heavy impact on Tanev. Not only is he being leaned on harder just in general to be that top D-man, but having to switch sides is making it extra complicated for him. So hopefully Edler will be back sooner rather than later, and everybody will fit back into the proper places. But right now, it's showing without Edler's presence back there.
Yeah. But even as you're going, even with Edler back, I could see them playing Biega a little bit more with Goodbranson struggling, because you can put Biega on both. Biega is comfortable on the right side.
He's a right shot guy.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's true, right? I keep thinking he's left for some reason in my head. He's right shot. Yeah.
No, yeah, Biega's a right shot guy, and that's unfortunately that's a bit of a fall down for him. If he was a left shot guy, I think he'd be playing a lot more, because I think he'd be playing instead of Pouliot, because he's much more effective than Pouliot.
Yeah.
But with the right side being Tanev, Stecher, Goodbranson, it's tough to get in there, because you've got Tanev and Stecher who are just absolute just minute munching defensemen, and then you've got Goodbranson who just, for the lack of a better, they just need to play him and hope that he plays well, because he's being paid so flippin' much, and either he becomes a trade piece or he just becomes a good player within the system. But he's just it's just unfortunate for Biega. He's on, for whatever reason, the right side defense on the Canucks is just a little too deep.
Good and bad problem to have.
Yeah.
So looking at the power play stats, the Canucks are in the bottom half. Not deep into the bottom half, but not great as well. They're 29 for 100. They're sitting at a 16.8% clip. Some of the teams that are worse than them are the Coyotes, the Red Wings, the Ducks, the Kings. Some of the teams that are kind of in the bottom half of the league. They're kind of sitting in that group. What's going on with this power play? I mean, there is a lot. Are you disappointed with the power play, or are we with the skill? Is this part of the development of the team?
Yes and yes. I'm disappointed with the power play, because there's enough skill out on that power play to be at the very least an average power play or above average power play, but it still is the development of the players. The puck movement isn't there. It's not. The urgency isn't there. When that power play clicks, as we saw when it was 6-on-4, the goalie pulled versus Chicago, I don't see a team or a goalie that's going to be able to keep the Canucks at bay, because you're going to have Boeser on one side and Pettersson on the other side just rifling shots. But it's just the puck movement is just leaves a lot to be desired. And with the current setup that they have, they've got Bo Horvat as the net front presence and the down low spot. You've got Pettersson on the half boards, basically running it a little bit. You've got your defenseman up top, which has been Edler for the most part. And then they've got the bumper spot and the off-wing shooting spot. And in the bumper spot and the off-wing shooting spot, they've been rotating in players. Ideally, you want Boeser in that off-wing shooting spot, because that's his spot. That's where he's going to score a lot of his goals, especially when Quinn Hughes comes in, and with the way he can distribute the puck, the way he can create passing lanes and all that, it's going to be fun to watch. But right now, one of the biggest issues is they don't have a double threat at that off shooting spot and the bumper spot, because they've tried Goldobin in both those spots. They've tried Berchi in the bumper spot. They've tried Levo in the bumper spot. And the issue is that all three of those players are either good at shooting or good at passing, and they don't. The teams aren't respecting the shot in the bumper spot. Like, if you look at Washington's power play, they've got TJ Oshie in that spot, and when teams cut off the cross ice pass to Ovi, Backstrom can feed Oshie, and he can absolutely roof it from that spot, and then teams have to take that away, which opens up the cross ice pass to Ovi. If the Canucks can find a player who can do that, be that guy, and ideally it's a right shot player because of the one-timer options, that will help open up a lot of ice and a lot of room for Pettersson or Horvat, Boeser to start producing. Because right now, Pettersson's either a lot of times he's forcing shots. He doesn't have a shot. So he gives it down to Horvat, and you have Horvat trying to jam it in short side, because because when the puck's down there below the goal line, teams aren't respecting the Josh Levos, the Nikolai Goldobins, the Sven Berchis in that bumper spot, and the cross ice to Boeser from down there isn't there like it was last year when the Sedins were still running the power play.
Their second power play unit right now, according to what I'm seeing on Daily Faceoff, is Sutter, Goldobin, Virtanen, and then Pouliot and Eriksson at the point. Mm-hmm. Which brings your point of why a Mark Stone would be so valuable, because he can do that kind of thing, right? It feels like it seems to me, from what I'm hearing you say, is there's not a lot of fear of what you know what to take away in a Canucks power play.
Yeah. The other thing for me is I would play up in the umbrella a lot more, and that's where if they give Stecher a shot on the top unit, it makes a lot more sense, because if you look at how he can distribute the puck and he can walk the line, he will open up those passing lanes and those one-timers for Boeser and Pettersson. And then once teams have to start respecting that opens up the down-low plays a little bit more. But it all comes down to puck movement. There's no easy solution to this right now other than better puck movement.
Tyler, what are your thoughts?
It's just the only way to summarize the power play for me is just leaving lots to be desired there. It's not horrible, but like we've been talking about here, just the fact that the other team just needs to take away the opportunities from certain guys, there's not really much they can do beyond that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, a little more depth would help. I think Green has tried pretty much everything there is to try to get the percentage up. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's part of that development. And they're doing what they can, and we'll see as the night or as today goes on, or as the season goes on, where that goes. I guess overall, one of these days in a future conversation, I know we're going to get into Goldobin in an in-depth way, but I feel like later in the year I want to get into a bit of an in-depth conversation about where Jake Virtanen is at, because the conversation around him is becoming quite interesting, because there's some that are willing to trade him. We're not doing we shut that down last week, but where this guy is and should be, I think that'll be an interesting conversation in a future time. Not saying to trade him, but yeah. Now Thatcher Demko got hurt on Monday and in a practice, which meant for an emergency call-up of Michael DiPietro. There was some question of whether or not you could play DiPietro in an emergency call-up, but it turns out you actually can. First of all, the first question, I guess, about this is are you perturbed that Benning put the Canucks goaltending situation in a bit of an awkward spot? Because some were. And two, looking at the schedule, you've got this week San Jose and then back-to-back against LA and Anaheim after tonight's game in Calgary. Do you play Michael DiPietro?
I think that should be an option. I would love to see it happen. I would love to see it. The thing with DiPietro that I've found is that his mental game and his mental game is just off the charts. He is a very driven, a very focused player who's going to find a way to rise to the occasion. He's a big game, big money goaltender. He has been through his whole junior career. We saw it in the World Juniors. That team should have gone farther if they had a team in front of him that could score. And with the back-to-back versus a couple teams who are just falling out of the turtle race faster than the St. Louis Blues and the Chicago Blackhawks are rising in the turtle race. It makes sense to me, because even though after that week the Canucks have a 4-day break in the week after, I still think it makes a lot of sense as long as Demko's not still injured. He's supposed to be out about around 10 days, so that should be around the game in Anaheim. So it might not happen, but the one thing with Markstrom is you can't overplay him. The Canucks did in the fall because of the Nilsson injury. Demko was injured, and which meant they had to call up Richard Bachman before he got injured. And that's when the Canucks went into their ridiculously horrible November where they just couldn't win a game. And a lot of it was because Markstrom just wasn't able to make the stops because he was so fatigued. So give him a rest. Give him a night off. Reward DiPietro. Give him a shot. Don't stray away from scheduled starts just because you have to have a emergency call up. And as for getting upset at Gillis for Benning for what happened, I think that's short-sighted. there's no way that the Canucks could have predicted that Demko would have been injured and out for 10 days, and that Mike McKenna would get claimed by Philly, who now has 18 goalies.
Yeah.
They had more goalies than centers.
And of course, Philadelphia would be the place for that.
Yeah.
And then as a side, the Comets played the Lehigh Valley Phantoms last night, and Mike McKenna was in net for the Phantoms on a conditioning stint and got lit up by the Comets in the third period. So, no, you can't get mad at Benning for what happened. It's Demko was ready. You had to get rid of Nilsson. He had done nothing. He hadn't won a game.
Yeah.
That at the time that trade, and Demko. It's time to give Demko the backup role because he needs games. He needs to learn at the NHL level. There's definitely a massive gap between junior to AHL and AHL to NHL, and going back to DiPietro, that's another reason why you give him a look here, because it allows him to see what that gap is.
I would like to see that approach taken, but I just think that's probably unlikely the way the Canucks do things. As long as they feel like Markstrom is not fatigued, I think he's going to be getting all these starts until Demko's back. But I don't know if that's just, you could say that's being too cautious with DiPietro, but he is a young guy. They don't want to get him in there and have him get torched. They don't want to have a setback of that sort. But we have seen evidence this year where if you work Markstrom for too long, he's ineffective, and it goes back to that Richard Buckman start against Minnesota. I mean, they played him pretty much because they had to. The Markstrom was out of gas, and then when Bachman played, it was evident why they weren't playing him. Just not very good. So, the organization's going to be cautious, but we'll see what happens. I think it's less likely than we would hope for that DiPietro gets a start.
Like, what really is going to hurt DiPietro if he gets torched? We know he has the mental makeup to bounce back. I mean, some of the best. I'm not putting DiPietro in a legend, but I'm just pointing this out. Some of the best, like Mike Vernon, when he started, got lit up. The only one that I can think of that didn't really have a struggle was Patrick Waugh. But a lot of the really good goaltenders started and got kind of torched. And so what's really going to hurt DiPietro? I mean, to me, if you're playing Markstrom and Markstrom gets torched against the Kings or the Ducks, I think that hurts Markstrom more going forward than DiPietro, don't you?
Yeah, that's fair, I think, to say that. But
the only issue is being in the middle of the playoff race. It's just you wonder how if Green is willing to make that gamble. But the other thing is I think Demko should be back by around that time for that back-to-back. So who knows, they may the decision may get taken out of their hands and they'll get Demko back and he'll start.
Yeah, it could be fair. And if it's longer term, then there's some other issues. By the way, Anders Nilsson got a shutout against the Anaheim Ducks a couple nights ago. Did you know that in the last 5 games, the Ducks have been outscored 31-5?
Jeez.
Like, this week has been, like, we have, this is, like, we've talked about the Oilers. This has been an epic collapse of the Anaheim Ducks. Like, it is shocking to me how bad this team has turned.
It's the District 5 Ducks, the District 5 team before Gordon Bombay showed up.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, what's really stunning about it is how they're even still in the playoff race.
I know.
Just, like that's the 3-point games and the false parity and all that. I mean, here's the best example of that.
Yeah, I honestly think I think they need to start going wins and losses and not get the overtime point. I think that's might be the best way to go going forward. But they still could be in the playoffs either way. But yeah, I don't know. So we've a couple weeks ago
Speaking of the
talked.
Ducks,
What's that?
They are down 4-0 to Philadelphia
Wow.
after the first.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
And they and from what I understand, they can't fire Randy Carlyle because the ownership won't let Murray do it. So you took Boudreau. From what I was read, they're basically punishing Murray for firing Bruce Boudreau. You wanted this guy in for Bruce Boudreau. You're going to have to stick with him until the end of the year.
Yeah, that, and I think it's just that they're probably also paying Boudreau a bit, still a bit, even though, because the way coaches' contracts work when they get fired is that the old team will still have to pay for an agreed upon amount for every season until that original contract is up. So there's a good chance that Anaheim is still paying Boudreau a little bit.
Yeah. They probably don't want to be paying another coach, which is fair. But yeah, what a mess. But they could end up with Jack Hughes too. So who knows? A couple of weeks ago, we talked about what was going on in Utica, and we talked about some of the players there and some of the people that are on the prospect list, and we need to see or would like to see more of. But there was an interesting conversation on TSN about the coaching and the management of Utica. I'm going to play a little bit of what J.D. Burke had to say here.
Yeah, I think ideally I wouldn't have to write a piece like that one. I mean, frankly, I would love to envision a scenario where some of the brightest parts of the Canucks' future go to Utica and they develop. They reach above their expected ceilings. They blow the team away and become this excellent player at the AHL level. But frankly, we haven't seen that from the Utica Comets. And I think the fact that, look, we're about 5+ years into that agreement, and they've produced about one NHLer for the Canucks. Maybe, if you count Nikolai Goldobin, and that seems to be on shaky footing right now. I think we could all agree it hasn't been great. That deal has not worked out for Vancouver. Now, I don't want to hold Trent Cole and Ryan Johnson wholly responsible for that because they haven't been there for the entirety of that span. But, I mean, look at the statistics here. Jonathan Dallin is barely at half a point per game, only has 7 points at 5-on-5. That's somebody who was supposed to become a big part of the Canucks' future, and I see him just stagnating at the AHL level. I look at Lukas Jacek. He's somebody who goes from the first and second line to the press box and back again, and I can't countenance that with the results he's producing at 5-on-5, where he's one of the Comets' most productive forwards. It just doesn't make sense. You go on down the list. How is it beneficial for Jonah Gadjevich to be playing 8 minutes a night at 5-on-5 every fifth day of the calendar with 2 ECHL face punchers? How is this beneficial to his development? These are questions that need to be asked because right now I don't think that the Comets as an organization have earned the benefit of the doubt. And frankly, looking at what's happening right now, it's not looking good.
Yeah, so that was J.D. Burke. He wrote an article in The Athletic about the development of Utica Comets. They talked about that a little bit on Halford Ruff Show on TSN, where I got that clip from. So, kind of, what do you think here? Are you concerned with the development of the Utica Comets? Do they need to make a change? What are you seeing here? We talked about some people we wanted to see up. They didn't bring up Zach McEwen as having a pretty good year. That wasn't part of it. But what are you seeing there? Are you concerned? Are you optimistic? What are your thoughts?
First off, I think that it's very rare that you see a team that has a lot of rookie AHLers be able to be successful in getting them all in. I think they've done a decent job at that. But that being said, the job of the Comets, more than anything else, is to develop talent, and JD Burke is right in that the talent needs to play. So the scratching of Jonah Gadjevich and Lucas Jasic more often than we would like is something to be concerned about. That being said, the AHL is still a tough league. And Jonah Gadjevich, as much potential as he has to be a bit of a game changer, a nuclear deterrent in the Tom Wilson way, his skating is not where it needs to be, and that's going to take time to fix. Let's look at Zach McEwen as an example. He came in last year. He got this treatment. He got scratched. He got little to low minutes, but come the end of the season, he was playing top 9, top 6 minutes. And then this year they switched him from center to wing, and he's an absolutely big part of the Comets, and someone who is now a legit option for a call-up and a legit option for the Canucks to as a prospect to be a top 9 forward. I think there might be a little bit of angst and wanting to see some quick development from these players, especially Jonathan Dahlen, just because of his chemistry with Pettersson in the past. But we have to realize that Gadjevich, Lind, Dahlen are all still young. Gadjevich and Lind, a lot of their peers that were from their draft class are still in junior. So this is a bonus year. And fans and media should all be looking at this as a 2-year plan for those players more than anything else. But like I said, that being said, I would like to see them get more opportunities and see a progression of them going up the lineup from now till the end of the season. And if we do see that, then I think all this worry is a little just not worth it. But if we don't see it, then that's when we have to start looking at a change and try and figure out how the Comets can develop more players, because they haven't developed many players. They've had Goldobin. They've had McEwen. It looks like he could be a success story, but other than that, there really hasn't been anyone that has spent significant time down there that under Trent Call that has really seen much. And even under Travis Green, I think Jake Virtanen is the only one that spent a significant time down there that saw the graduation up to the NHL.
All of this, for me, I would say is a concern. I wouldn't go to the level of worrying. That clip we listened to, I mean, the tone I was getting out of that was impatience. I mean, the Canucks have had to spend a lot of years here rebuilding the depth all the way through their various levels, and I guess this conversation underscores how important this upcoming draft is for the Canucks to have lots of picks and keep filling the system with potential, guys that they're not all going to be hits, but if you have lots of picks, you're hoping at least a few of them will go to the Comets and start to develop. I think it's a little bit premature to say that the whole Utica Comets arrangement's a disaster or it's failing or whatever. I mean, I think in theory it's good that the Canucks own the farm team. There's a little more direct control and management over what goes on there, but beyond that, I mean, you gotta draft well and put those guys in the AHL and let them have a chance to grow. As you say, Sean, it's still a challenging league. It's not the NHL, but it's still a pretty good league.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the Bakersfield lineup here, just as a comparison, and there isn't anyone on this Oiler roster that has played a lot. Like, we've seen Ethan Bear a little bit, we're seeing Caleb Jones a little bit, and he's coming, but I mean, he's still got some work. Just Jesse PRV has been up and down. Yamamoto has been up and down. Even if you look at Stockton, there's been a lot of what the Stockton Heat have is a lot of veterans. Like, you got a Kirby Reichel, an Alan Klein. Those are NHL vet. Curtis Lazar, NHL veteran. I mean, Dubé, Spencer Food. There's not a lot there that is like super prospect-y. And I think it takes time, like anything else, for a lot of these prospects to, like, I think we're getting the part of the problem is you see an Elias Pettersson and a Brock Boeser break out, and you're like, wow, why can't other players do that? It takes time for players to develop. That's just the reality of the situation. And the AHL, like, is a better league than people realize. And there is a lot of, now with the emergence of a lot of young players, you're seeing a lot of veterans going down there. And it's maybe a harder league now than it was even 5 or 10 years ago. You know, like, yeah, we're seeing a lot of veterans down in the AHL now. Not easy to play there.
Yeah, it should be noted too that with the Canucks, they have Sam Gagner in the AHL, but not playing for the Comets.
Yeah.
I think fans see the success that Tampa is having, the success that Toronto's having with players who had played down there and coming up. But I just the one that I wanted to look at was Yanni Gourde. Like, I didn't realize how old he is. He's 27 years old, but he spent a good parts of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seasons in the AHL before he came up, and is now a very big part of the Tampa Bay Lightning. So it takes time with some players. It's not always going to be a one and done situation.
Yeah,
I do think that had Ole Hulevi stayed healthy and played the way continued to play the way he had, a lot of this disconcern and the tone that JD Burke had taken would be tempered, because we would be seeing a bit of a success in Ole Hulevi there. But then you also look at where all these players were drafted. They're all second round or later picks. So those players, for the most part, are going to take a little bit longer. I think patience is something that we need to accept as a part of the deal here. Maybe it's not going to, and this is the first batch of young players that are coming up as a whole that are coming into Utica.
Yeah.
So it's. I think we need to have a little more patience, and I think while JD Burke brings up a lot of good points, I think patience is something that we need to take in this route.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And you even look at the Stockton Heat roster, the youngest guy that played a game for the Heat was Iso Valimaki at 19. You're looking at pretty much 20 to 25. So, yeah, it's tough, not easy. I mean, Anthony Peluso was playing down there, and he's 29 years old, and there's Buddy Robinson's 26. So you're not, like, I don't know. Yeah, I think patience is the key here.
And with a lot of these players, when they come in from playing in lower leagues out in Europe, or playing NCAA or juniors, they're not playing. They, for the most part, they haven't played against guys who spend all day, every day training.
Yeah.
They either, or are, if they do, but they're also, their age range, they're still developing. They're the old. They just came, like Cole Lind and Jonah Gadjevich just came from junior, where they were the old, like some of the oldest players, some of the biggest players.
Yeah.
They have to learn how to play, and not when they aren't the strongest.
You know, I was listening to on my way home from work last night. I was listening to the Giants-Blazers game, and they had Jamie Heward on after the game. And one of the things that he said that was I just found so fascinating was about the Giants is they said, you know, the players decided they wanted to take an extra. That wasn't the coaches; it was the players that decided that they wanted to take an extra 15 minutes to work on the power play. And he talked about how rare that is in that day and age in that league that players would do that. And I think that one of the challenges that I would imagine getting into higher level leagues is you're playing with players that absolutely eat, sleep, drink the game of hockey. Like it is, we talked about this at the beginning of the podcast. Just it's inbred in them that's the only thing that they care about. And as you grow into that, I think that becomes more of a challenge about how you develop, how your work habits are, and things like that. And that's another part of that is just how learning the mentality of the game as well as the skill of the game. And that's you can't coach that. You can't teach that. That just that grows, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, as well as condition.
Yeah,
because I think the step up from being in good shape for junior, being in good shape for a lower league in the Allsvenskan, or even and then the NCAA is completely different from the AHL or the NHL.
Yeah.
So it'll be I think the overall tone in the article and that radio hit from JD Burke was a bit too negative, but I think it's something to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. So tonight is the last game of the hockey day in Canada, and the lineups for the Canucks tonight, according to Brendan Batchelor, Horvat, Roussel, and Goldobin, Pettersson, Levo, Boeser, Sutter, Granlund, Virtanen, Beagle, Eriksson, and Mott, Schaller, the extra skater, defense, Tanev and Goodbradson, Hutton, Biega, Pouliot and Brisebois, or Biega, Brisebois is the healthy scratch. And I'm assuming that it's Markstrom in goal. He didn't say it, but I'm assuming that. From what it looks like for the Flames, Travis Hamonic is... I don't know how this man does it. He took a pretty bad... looked like a pretty serious hit against the San Jose Sharks, but somehow looks like he's going to be ready for tonight. And it's expected that David Rittich will be starting tonight, which is interesting. What are we looking for tonight? What are we expecting? Sean was saying that he was watching the highlights before.
I like that they're starting the game with Roussel on the line with Horvat. We've seen it in later in games when the lines start to get shuffled. I like those two together. I think they work really well together. So I'm happy to see that. I'm interested to see how they work with Goldie. It'll be interesting to see if that happens. I'd like to, and hopefully Levo can build off his game in Chicago because he had an absolutely fantastic game.
Yeah, he was definitely the standout for me against Chicago. The Canucks will have their hands full against Calgary tonight, no doubt about it. With the defense being a little bit thinner, that'll create some challenges for Vancouver to keep the Calgary Stars under control. But all their games this year have been very entertaining, great, close games, and I expect this to be the same as well.
Yeah. And this one might be a little bit feistier. Yeah, I would, for the Flames, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting how they've responded to the game in San Jose. I mean, they didn't play great, they didn't play terrible, but this is a pretty big game for them, and I think a guy like Matthew Tkachuk needs to. He's been quiet for a while, so I'm kind of expecting him to jump up a bit. I'm wondering as the game goes on, though, from a Canucks perspective, do you see Virtanen jumping on? I have to admit, I like Horvat and Virtanen together as well. I'd like to see that a little bit more.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, because
there seems to be stretches that Green will sit goalie, and a Roussel, Horvat, Virtanen line would be interesting to watch. But yeah, maybe.
As it feels like Roussel and Virtanen have some good chemistry together as well.
All three of them are good straight ahead players. So I think they do have a bit more chemistry than you would expect from them.
Yeah, should be interesting. Is there anything else we want to get into before we wrap this up?
I just maybe quickly touch on the other Hockey Night in Canada matchups, Winnipeg and Ottawa. That one's happening. I think that game's underway now, but that should be good. It's a big one for Winnipeg. They didn't have a very good game against Montreal. Paul Maurice with his great quote after that game saying the coaches were no good, the players were no good, the food was no good. Let's just hope the plane works.
That was great.
So Winnipeg looking to bounce back. Ottawa, I mean, it's just getting more and more miserable for Ottawa this year.
Yeah.
Toronto and Montreal. I mean, it's been a long time since we've had a Toronto-Montreal matchup that's been this meaningful, I think, in terms of the standings, playoffs, and everything. So that should be quite entertaining as well. And then anytime Calgary and Vancouver get together, it's great.
Yeah.
Oh, and then you look at just the rest of the slate. Minnesota, big game for them in the Turtle Derby. They're up 2-1 right now. Colorado's up. It's St. Louis is up. There's it's with so many games on today with Hockey Day in Canada, and I believe it's Hockey Day in America as well. It's just it's a great day for hockey and a great day for scoreboard watching too.
Yeah,
shouldn't miss here as well. Edmonton's hosting San Jose. The Oilers have had a couple of really awful games against the Sharks this year in recent times, relatively recent times. So that'll be one to watch and see how the Oilers perform. Had a jersey on the ice incident earlier this week.
Yes.
So things are getting testy there. And, Sean, I'm glad that you brought up Minnesota. Devastating news for them to lose Mikko Koivu for the rest of the season.
Totally.
That'll be tough for them to well, with it being a Turtle Derby and all that, they'll still be in it, but with the way Chicago's playing, with the way St. Louis is playing, with the way Colorado can play, I think they're going to fall out.
I wonder if Minnesota is going to. We start hearing Minnesota in the Panarin talks. They're not typically after the big fish. I mean, but
they've done a couple big moves, but. That was Chuck Fletcher before he got fired. So I don't know. I think the thing with Panarin for them is he'd be an absolutely pure rental because he's not signing in Minnesota.
No, absolutely not.
So I think with Koivu out, I think they'd be better off looking to find a replacement center. To at least take up the slack in what is missing now. So
yeah. The other thing just about Chicago, it's one of those things if they get I'm not saying that they're not the greatest of teams, but if they get into the playoffs, they can. I think that they can beat a Winnipeg or a Calgary. I think they can give them a run, and And I wonder if Jeremy Cullickson gets some consideration for Coach of the Year if that happens. Which is entirely weird, but
yeah, they've got some interesting pieces. Alex DeBrincat is someone that I think doesn't get enough credit for the player he is. And what's interesting is now, in hindsight, we're looking at two fairly big trades that Arizona has made, moving out big name players that they had drafted very high in the draft. They're not looking good for them.
no.
Max Domi in Montreal is completely outplaying Galchenyuk. And then Nick Schmaltz is playing well for them, but Dylan Strome is just thriving in Chicago. Let alone Brendan Perlini is a very good depth player for Chicago as well.
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
I think the John Chaika era in Arizona may be coming to an end sooner than later.
Yeah, that did not work out. I mean, if that was a Canadian team, you thought Peter Chiarelli was mocked. Good God, this guy. Yeah, that would be in Chiarelli era, like Chiarelli disaster mode. But yeah, and Montreal is not they're not getting. I don't know if they're getting the love that legitimately are going. That could be a first round matchup. Montreal and Toronto, which we talked about last week, which would end all other Canadian coverage. But who would have thought that?
You're looking at Toronto is 1 point up with 2 games in hand, but if Montreal wins tonight, they pass Toronto in the standings.
Yeah,
that's something I don't think anyone would have expected.
Nope, not at all. But when you have Carey Price coming back, and yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, so we'll see. This is going to be a fascinating day of hockey to watch. And we thank you all for listening and enjoy the games. Sean, where do you find you on Twitter?
I am Beardy Canucks 03.
And Tyler?
And I'm at T-Noble, T-N-O-B-L-E.
All right, and you can follow me, Kevole. And we will talk to you all next week. Bye for now.
Incoming, Stacy, 10 o'clock.
Highway.